IVM.
This is Audio Gyan, and I am your host Kedar Nimkar. Welcome to a deep dive into the minds of luminaries from the Indian creative world. I'm quoting our today's guest from one of his articles. I have this presentation that starts with me asking my viewers to identify 3 sets of entities that are put forth visually. The first set is Priyanka Chopra and Nick Jonas. The second set is Narendra Modi and Donald Trump. And the third is a species of dragonfly, which are very common in India, called Ground Skimmer. And most common, people, unless they are scientists, can identify the first set of entities but not the third one. And that's my main complaint, because my lives of my viewers revolve more around the dragonfly rather than Priyanka Chopra or Narendra Modi, as the dragonfly eats mosquitoes and saves us from diseases. Today, after a long chase, finally we have Rohan Chakravarty with us on AudioGyan. He frankly needs no introduction. Rohan is a cartoonist, illustrator, wildlife buff, and creator of Green Humour, a series of comic strips about nature. He tweets as the Toon Guy and posts as @green_humor on Instagram. There's some really wonderful interviews where many of his thoughts are gracefully captured, and I encourage listeners to read those first and then tune into the show. We'll try and document few of Rohan's philosophies and his worldview in today's episode. So thank you, Rohan, for giving your time. It's a real honor to have you on AudioGyan.
Thanks a lot, Kedar. Thanks for having me on this show. Among such a distinguished set of guests you've had before, it's a real honor to be here.
Awesome, great. And I'll also tell the listeners that Rohan has already given a disclaimer that there will be some birds, some pets around him as disturbance, and that's quite acceptable because it's quite organic for him to be in the nature. So yeah.
And this is a show about wildlife, so yeah, I'm hoping it'll be natural ambient sound.
Yeah. Now, wildlife and also a bit of design and illustration, which is like the core of AudioGyan. So
Of
yeah,
course.
I wanted to just avoid the cliche question, but I've been getting some feedback from my listeners saying that how can you just have a very small introduction for those who are new or maybe just have stumbled upon the episode. So I wanted to start off by asking that how did you get into this and especially what keeps you motivated to go in the depths of each artwork, right? At various levels. It's technically, politically, artistically, obviously, and if any other dimension that you capture. So if you can just give some context and then we'll move on.
Thanks a lot, Kedar. I really appreciate that you want to avoid cliches. I get asked this question in every interview and every conversation about my work, about how I started, and I keep telling people that it was the sighting of a tigress that prompted the idea of green humor. And I've said this, although it is a true story, I've said this, more than 35 times, and I'm sure that tigress by now is cursing me. But yeah, that is the true story. It was the sighting of my first wild tigress that really prompted me to combine two of my passions, which is cartooning and wildlife, and see what comes out of it. Eventually, 5 years down the line, after that happened, Green Humor was born. So, the example you quoted about the game I play with my people who view my presentation. I did a similar thing once in a festival in Bombay where I showed people 2 slides. One was Nigella Lawson, and the other was the grey mullet. It's a commonly eaten fish all around our coasts, and it sustains a large part of India's population. But people could identify Nigella, who's a chef from another country, but not the fish that sustains almost the entire Indian coastal population. So that's my grouse with the way we consume information and the way biodiversity is treated by people who are responsible for disseminating most of the information we consume. And I think that really needs changing. I think biodiversity and conservation should occupy the front pages and the most important pages of newspapers and these days online columns and websites, which does not tend to happen. So I try to infuse as much life, as much zing as possible into that kind of communication, so that it's a step towards making it mainstream, and that's what I've been trying to do. And there are a lot of issues in that discourse to break down and to simplify for viewers, for lay viewers like myself. That includes not just wildlife and conservation, but also wildlife biology, also the socio-politics of environment conservation in a country like ours where those two things can really not be separated. So there is a lot to do in terms of creative communication around ecology and conservation, and that's my work. Hopefully, is one small step in that direction.
Yeah. I mean, again, not dwelling into or ranting about the colonialism or what happened due to the invasions, but you have been in lot of like dense forests in Arunachal Pradesh and other places. And also one of the interviews had this line that people, including me and around me, can identify cars and brands and logos, but
Right.
can't identify trees or birds. So have you pondered upon like if you zoom out of a 500-year scale, like what happened, like because the indigenous people know everything, and they may not obviously know Priyanka Chopra, but they can definitely identify like two different plants which have like one is a poisonous, or like we see in what this Ranveer Kapoor show, what is Ranveer Singh show, that there are two sets of berries and one is a poisonous, and you can identify those, but not really. You have any thoughts around that? Like, have you pondered कि ये कैसे हुआ? Like, why did it happen? Or any insights you have because of your travel mainly?
I have to be a historian to answer that question correctly, but from whatever I know, it has a lot to do with capitalism and colonialism, and a lot of the concepts that still exist about conservation and the way environmental conservation or nature conservation in India is looked at has its roots embedded in a colonial understanding of the issue. And I would really urge people who want to challenge themselves and learn more about how exactly it happens on field and what kind of viewpoints come into conflict with each other. I would really urge them to travel to places that indigenous communities occupy or inhabit. And because I have had the access to such communities and such places, I know that a lot of my own understanding of conservation was colonial. And in order to convey that kind of information correctly to myself and to my viewers, I had to unlearn and relearn a lot of concepts. So, for example, in Arunachal, where I've spent a considerable amount of time working on forest department projects and community conservation projects, I have stayed in the homes of people who hunt wild animals, people who have been from hunting families. They hunt both for subsistence and for festivities, and yet even though hunting for bushmeat is constitutionally illegal, I have seen that it happens in a far more sustainable manner than say a project that is that can at best be called unplanned development. A dam, for example, in a northeastern river where there is already seismic activity, there is already seismic instability, and yet the dam goes through. Community lives are in danger, wildlife is in danger, and yet the dam goes through. So it's for anybody with common sense to pick which one is more sustainable.
I remember this film by Satyajit Ray, Aparajito, where they're having this discussion of like the Agori people eating all sorts of living beings and
Right.
quite uncivilized in a colonial sense. And to that, what do you call uncivilized? Like just putting a bomb and destroying like generations
Right.
in Hiroshima and Nagasaki at one sweep is civilization, or just people like eating to survive and not really to dominate? Or so you want to share any nuances, because I was just going through one of the article where you said that
I haven't tried human meat yet, so I'm the wrong person to answer that question.
no, I'm talking about the article where you mentioned that these people are very particular that whom to kill when
Yeah,
it comes of the gender, the kind of species they look at,
Right.
whether it's a herd or whether it's a standalone. Like any observations which was
See,
not.
it's not just about how they hunt or what they hunt, and it's also about the way that their very lifestyles are intertwined with the workings of the natural world, and that's something when I was exposed to that, I felt that my own lifestyle, even though I draw about wildlife, is very disconnected with nature. Right from the turmeric that is used in their kitchens to the folklore that they pass on to their children. For example, in the eastern part of Arunachal, around where Mishimi Hills is, that's where people, particularly the Idu Mishmi tribe, they think of the tiger as their brothers, and it is inherently embedded in them to not kill tigers. So it's very unlikely that you will find a poacher from that community. So there are these ethos that are inherently embedded in a lot of indigenous communities, and it would be wrong on my part to appropriate that in this interview because I do not know much, and I don't want to do that. But what I mean to say is that it is something that our discourse, on our official discourses at least on conservation, has been missing out on, and also actively ignoring, because there is there is land at stake, there is a lot of money at stake, and there are profits to make, and all this comes in the way of colonial traditional conservation. So what needs to be done now is that this kind of a truly sustainable model of conservation needs to be mainstreamed, needs to be spoken about, and the right voices need to reach people in authority.
No, but when you say sustainability, again, this word is also a little bit abused. So you have any insights as to, क्योंकि मैंने देखे जो लोग like depth में काम कर रहे हैं वो online है नहीं. They are like actually working at a grassroots level and running around and कुछ है मतलब, and you like you're probably in a great spot where you are getting to travel, look at them firsthand, and then translate into art, and then translate into your humor, and bring it mainstream. But like, can this be scaled? Like ये जो sustainability का like cliche definition से हट के actually sustainability पे जाएं.
You're asking very scientific questions, and I'm not a scientist, so I don't know how much of it I'm qualified to answer. But I'll give you my personal opinion on sustainability. I think an urban dweller like you or me is not capable of a sustainable life, practically speaking. I don't think I am. But still, I do my best to meet the standards of what I perceive as a sustainable life. So whatever steps I can take, being where I am, that is sustainability to me, and that involves a lot of things like cutting down on your meat, cutting down on your travel, cutting down on your usage of plastic, all things that are non-biodegradable, to whatever capacity you can execute. And a large part of it is also got to do with the way you are a democratically and electorally oriented citizen, which means that the way you vote is also a very important factor of sustainability. And I think that determines how sustainable you are a lot more than your zero waste life or your the bamboo toothbrush you're using. So it's on a lot of levels, and I think the best an individual can do really adds up as a community.
Got it. Okay, so maybe we'll just slightly change gears from the wildlife thing, but a little bit of art. Like, if you can also set some context of like what's the difference between a comic, a cartoon, and an illustration. And I know like people use them interchangeably the way people use typeface and font. But how do you like sort of capture these new, maybe you can first start off with like the difference and then we'll move on.
Thank you. Now I feel like it's a podcast about design. So of course nowadays definitions and terms really don't matter to readers or consumers much. They are used interchangeably left, right and center, but I tend to be somewhat pedantic in these matters still, because I'm from a generation of cartoonists that aspire to be in the print, and all my idols have been in the print. So, and again, it's bad news for me because the print is dying, and we have to figure out ways and means to survive on the web. So anyway, speaking about definitions, I think a cartoon is, traditionally speaking, is a humorous visual that may or may not have captions. It becomes a comic strip when there is a sequence of these images. That's what we call a comic strip. what you normally read in the Sunday paper. Those are comic strips. A graphic novel is when you publish a full-length book that may include comic strips or may include a story in a comic or a graphic format. An illustration is simply the visual interpretation of text. Even a photograph is an illustration. Even a painting that depicts textual information is an illustration. So, of course, all of these can be loosely and interchangeably used, but for pedantic people like me and you, definitions still matter.
Yeah. And then how do you like sort of capture the nuances or capture the core essence, I would say, of what you wish to communicate? Because I'm sure you're inspired by certain visuals, you're inspired by events or like certain situations which happen around you. And this is particularly to understand because I'm not like I've bought few of your posters and but not as much as into wildlife as I'm supposed to be.
Right.
But I was like I became your fan when I saw the Abbas Kiarostami comic. I think you had done with Mubi or someone where you just like one photo, like one illustration, and it captured the essence of the movie completely. So how do you arrive at it, or what is the process? If you can just, I know asking an artist about the process is a tricky one, but I'm trying to just pick your brain.
I'm really glad you brought up the Mubi collaboration. I collaborated with Mubi on a small set of cartoons that promoted some of the movies in their gallery. I'm a big cinema buff, and I keep a track of art house as well as the bad stuff that India churns out.
Yeah.
Both the good and the bad stuff. I think there's a new wave going on in down south, and especially in Malayalam cinema. So anyway, I keep a track of cinema from around the world, and this was very special because it involved promoting films through cartoons, and these are films by some of my favorite filmmakers like Abbas Kiarostami. So that was an interesting deviation from my usual work, which is environmental and scientific in nature. How I approach the creative aspect of my work is rather simple. I think I am, as a reader or as a consumer of information, I am pretty slow. I tend to decode, understand, and retain things very slowly. So my goal is that whatever I draw, it has to become a means for me to retain, and not only retain but also respond to the information that I've read or I want to convey. And once it has done so for me, I'm sure that it will do so for my readers. I generally assume that my readers are smarter people than I am. So if I can understand what I'm drawing about and it entertains me, then I'm sure it will have the same impact on my readers. So that's the thumb rule I follow. A lot of things find their way into what I draw as inspiration or influences. Mostly, I think the best kind of inspiration is when I have actually seen an animal or I've actually interacted with something that I'm drawing about. It could be a community, it could be an issue that I've witnessed. So there are various aspects to it. But also, I do draw about a lot of things that I do not witness firsthand, especially for my columns. And these involve, drawing polar animals. I haven't been to the poles yet, unfortunately. Drawing about wildlife from around the world. And for that, I do extensive homework. I read up as much as possible. I watch videos whenever they're available. I look up documentaries, etc. I also interact with a lot of scientists from around the world as part of my work. People who are working on a specific set of animals, people who are working with climate change, people who are working with communities in terms of building resilience around disaster and climate change. And all of that finds its way into my work one way or the other.
Awesome, yeah, great. Sometimes ignorance is bliss is true, because even when I'm doing these interviews, I don't know at what point I should keep researching to find the nuances or just like go on with the basic questions. But then where does the humor come from?
Oh, just a few loose screws in your head. That's all it takes, I guess.
No, I mean, you keep hearing these days, especially stand-up comedians who are slightly left-wing, or I would say just trying some dissent. They say that they don't need to like hunt for a joke. The joke is right happening on the TV. So,
Yeah.
are things happening around you when you travel in the wildlife situation, or big brands like doing some stuff under the name of sustainability, or anything which catches your fancy? Or
I'll just poke you on the left wing bit. I don't think that's the right word to use for a comedian or a cartoonist, because the core essence of comedy or cartooning is to derive some kind of fun and pleasure from offending people. So a cartoonist, I keep saying this, a cartoonist is never a leftist or a rightist. He's purely a sadist, and that's how I describe him. uh, yeah, there is a lot of politics, a lot of things that should not be happening in the name of conservation that keep happening. Coincidentally, today is the day of the cheetah reintroduction program in India, and that's again one of a prime example of this country's misplaced priorities. Lions have been waiting for a satellite population to be established in the same park where cheetahs are being reintroduced. An entire tribe has been relocated from the park, first so that lions could come in. Then a lot of politics got in the way of lion reintroduction. The lions are still suffering in Gujarat. Every time there is a disease, it wipes out a fourth of the population, and we don't know what else to do with lions, because our politicians refuse to part with the core population in order to establish a satellite population. And all of that is being ignored now to bring in another set of problems to this country, which is nothing but I'd say and a lot of people who are conservationists and scientists share this opinion, that it's just a case of misplaced priorities. It's just a case of creating pomp and show instead of resolving core issues. And I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I really hope and wish the cheetahs well. And I really hope that they can make something out of this country. So a lot of things are happening that shouldn't be happening, and that's why I feel there are a lot of nuances in this discourse that need to be broken and simplified. And I think humor is a very good tool to do that.
Yeah, I remember this comic panel, like just four slide panel where there's a bear in the wild, and then the same bear is in a mall, and the annotation or whatever the script says that how come you are here, and the bear asks how come you are here. Right. Like I was here before. so like it is comedy, but yeah, I know what you mean. So how would you define sort of your style of work, because you come from dentist or not from a design school kind of a background? So how did you arrive at the style, or what style of work is it? Is it like just blanket sadist, or any?
I'm guessing you're asking me about my art style.
Yes, art style. Yeah, I mean
that in a bit.
Yeah, please.
So as far as my humor is concerned, it is influenced by a lot of cartoonists and humorists I've read. Some of my imaginary mentors include Bill Watterson, the creator of Calvin and Hobbes, Gary Larson, who's probably my favorite cartoonist, and his humor was very dark. He would use a lot of offensive humor in a mainstream column and get away with it, and that really inspired me to make my humor as dark as possible whenever I can. And I also read a lot of Woody Allen and watched his films. I know it's a controversial name to take. He has a lot of very serious allegations against him, but as far as his work as a humorist is concerned, I think it's quite tremendous. And especially his written word, which not many people are well acquainted with, because his movies are more popular. But I think Woody Allen and his humor also gave me the drive to experiment with different kinds of humor and see what works best in a given situation. So I think reading Woody Allen has been a really good exercise for me as a humorist or a cartoonist. Other than all of this, there's the art side of it also, which is very important, the visual aspect of it. And that I'm a self-taught artist. I haven't undergone any formal training in art. So I've grown up on 2D animation. I've watched a lot of Warner Brothers, Hanna-Barbera, Chuck Jones. My favorite animator has been Genndy Tartakovsky, the guy who created Dexter's Lab. So it's his art style that has been a major influence in my work, and I consider him my my imaginary lifelong mentor. Yeah.
Awesome. And you also mentioned like critiques generally don't think or they generally have like a apprehension about anthropomorphism
That's right.
as a
Yes.
as a weakness of storytelling. So why do you think it is the case? Because it's quite natural and intuitive, right?
I feel so. I think having grown up on animation, I feel that anthropomorphism is indispensable to my work because that is what helps me build the connection between my subjects, which are usually animals, and my audiences, which are people. So, you really need that kind of a bridge to connect to two disconnected entities, and that's what anthropomorphism does for me. But a lot of people who critique that kind of communication are of the opinion that it creates tropes, it creates stereotypes because and those are quite they become quite entrenched over time. For a prime example is the big bad wolf of Red Riding Hood, and just to undo the notion that that kind of literature creates is a really difficult process. So I think anthropomorphism comes with a lot of responsibility. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to really understand your subject like the back of your hand before you approach that kind of communication, and you have to be prepared to deal with if you made a mistake, how to rectify it. You have to have a plan B every time you're using anthropomorphism as a tool. So a lot of organizations I work with are also of the opinion that anthropomorphism is not the right way to go, so I have to adapt my approach to suit their needs. For example, WWF, that published my first comic book, rejected my first concept for it, because it involved an anthropomorphic animal. And eventually I had to redo the whole concept, and that became The Great Indian Nature Trail, which was my first comic book, and it involved human characters. So there are roadblocks like these that I encounter on a daily basis in my work, and I think there are also creative challenges for you to solve.
But is there a conscious effort not to do it or particularly use it, or it's just a tool to express your thing, or it's just a medium so that the point is communicated rather than consciously trying to avoid it or introduce it?
No, for me it's neither. It's just that I relate better with animals than people, and to me they speak much more distinctly than human beings do. So that it's as simple as that.
Yeah, because I was reading this article where, I mean, anthropomorphism is kind of very, you put it rightly, it's a lot of responsibility, especially in a country like India where we revere, where we look up to idols, where we look up to like personification of a lot of things. So it's a slippery slope. So that then what do you do to like avoid or hold accountability and yet use it like sort of responsibly?
I try to know what I'm drawing about as well as possible. I do a lot of homework. Every comic strip I draw about has 3 pages of notes and 1 page of the comic draft itself. So that's the kind of research I like to do for what I draw. And I think it's not just about the animal or just about its life. It's also about especially when there are policies around that particular creature or that a particular place. Then you have to know whether the stand you're taking is ethically and morally sound or not. And I think that's the tricky bit, because there's so much misinformation these days, and you really have to be exposed to the right kind of people, the right kind of literature, to check your facts, to constantly verify what if your stand is correct or not. Cartooning unfortunately comes with a lot of opinion, and I like to make sure that the opinion I'm presenting is morally and ethically sound.
But yeah, आजकल तो like people get offended and like trolling तो common है for any reason. It could be like बस तो well, I know again a cliche question, but little bit of your experience ki, do you avoid this? Do you like just keep every notification on mute, or engage in a dialogue to like explain where you're coming from, or just like leave it?
I've tried a mix of everything, and I think what works best is that you have to realize that you do not owe your audience your sanity, and you have to abide by that principle. to just go on keeping doing what you do. And yeah, eventually you get a rhino skin and things smooth smooth out.
Beautiful. And since you're a movie buff, we recently lost Godard, and he used to
Right.
say that who's jumping in the void needs no explanation.
Right.
Cool. I want to just talk a little bit about how do you find like a good balance between the artistic side of your work and the scientific side, because you have engaged in a lot of infographics also, as we call it in the UI world. And then how has it changed over time? Like, does any particular, because when you are loaded with a lot of information, so for example, I'm also doing another project called Legends of India, where I just wish to document, people know like Gandhiji's probably just one or two marches, but there were like 16 of them. Now, obviously, you have to do research and then plot them and then think of placing them in the right order. There could be multiple variations of representing the same information when it comes to infographic. So, wo side pura technical ho gaya, and then like if you can share any learnings from there, ki how do you strive that balance?
Sure. So I've been lucky that a lot of my projects have happened with scientists, and these are some of the best scientists in India: ecologists, wildlife biologists, uh, organizations like Nature Conservation Foundation, Wildlife Trust of India, WWF, and many others, BirdLife International. And I've also taken these kind of collaborations abroad, where I've collaborated with scientific conservation organizations like Save Our Seas. I'm doing a project with ACOBAMS right now, which is a council of Mediterranean governments. So I do have a considerable access to information that is scientifically sound around ecology. And I think I'm really lucky in a way that this is something that my wildlife biologist friends keep telling me, that they have to work with the same animal all their lives, but my kind of portfolio allows me to explore. It's a dolphin this month, it could be a dung beetle next week, it could be a polar bear. So I think that's I look at it as an endless universe for me to explore. And that really helps me keep the art side of things going, the creative side of things going, to maintain the right kind of scientific balance. I have had considerable experience with scientists, considerable access to their work, how they function, the kind of literature they have to publish to substantiate their findings. In fact, my last book, Naturalist Study, was all about this. I actually went through really dreary and boring scientific papers and then tried to convert them into mysteries that my detective mongoose solves. So this was a bit to make science interesting to the layman, and of course, having scientists in my own family really helps. My brother is a bat biologist; he's doing his PhD on bats. My wife is an urban ecologist. So conversations with them always help. And every time I'm in doubt about the scientific side of things that I'm presenting in a cartoon, they always come to my rescue.
But like, do you ever sort of, वो creator's block होता ना, again I don't know whether it's a cliche one, but
No,
इतना
it's not.
information है कि उसको like then
Yeah.
फिर निकाल दो, and then when you are removing, you sometimes tend to lose the essence. तो वो zoom in, zoom out, back and forth के बारे में कुछ बोल सकते हो?
For me, creative blocks happen every day, and it's just something an artist has to figure out a way to live with. So I treat a creative block as a sign that your brain is telling you to replenish it. It could be as simple as going for a walk, listening to music, cooking something nice, or maybe reading an interesting book, reading up more literature about what you're drawing about. And yeah, I think eventually it all falls together, unless of course there's a deadline to meet. So yeah, I think artists shouldn't look at creative blocks as a threat. It's more of an enrichment or a replenishment for your gray matter. So yeah, I think that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, and because of the trolling and these days the political narrative has been increasing, the
Yes,
situation
of
is quite of changing. तो उसके बारे में भी कुछ सोचते हो? Apprehensions आता है कि नहीं यार, I'll go all out and then face it, because the cause and the place where you're coming from is quite honest and needs to be done in a particular way. So
See, as long as I was being told, it was still acceptable to me, and I was, okay with it. But nowadays, what happens is that some people write in support of your work, and they get trolled instead of you, and that is not acceptable to me. And especially, some of these are female friends, and the kind of trolling women receive online is far more derogatory than you or I can ever be exposed to. And if my work is causing that kind of a reaction, I would be very apprehensive of putting that kind of opinion out. So I do need to be careful about what kind of reactions a particular cartoon will incite. But I think as long as there is honesty in what you portray, there's always something to fall back on.
Got it. Cool. I think I'm sure like in-person interview and talking about the kind of work you do, the huge body of work that you have done, I think we can just keep talking endlessly and I'll run out of questions, but you have definitely a lot more to share. So just keeping this interview a bit short, I wanted to conclude with little cliche question, bear with me. Like, what's the toughest part of your job?
Wow, the toughest part of my job. I haven't really thought about this. Again, I would say that it is striking that balance between good humor and good science. That's really difficult to achieve, and I still struggle with it even today. I don't know if making a cartoon funny is taking the science away, or making a cartoon scientifically accurate is taking the humor away. And I work with a lot of different people who have their own different opinions. For example, I just made a joke for a set of scientists I'm working with about scientists being on LinkedIn and not really being well versed with other kinds of social media, and they kind of took offense to it. So I really don't know which spot what joke will hit. So figuring people's mindsets out with respect to humor I think that's a really tricky part. But I think as long as your work is entertaining you as an artist, there's always that. I think that's when you think you can safely think that you are doing something right.
एक्चुअली उसे और एक थोड़ा सा उसी का एक्सटेंशन है कि अप्पू पेन के साथ आई हैड डन इंटरव्यू एंड ही सेड कि लाइक दीस डेज कॉमिक आर्टिस्ट और जनरली दे जस्ट आर वेटिंग फॉर समथिंग and quickly sketch something and put out on Instagram to just be first in the race to have their opinion against a particular situation.
Right. Yeah.
तो ये बहुत अजीबो गरीब, I wouldn't say bad because again कौन से एक्सिस से देख रहे हो वो है, but somehow the incentives are different in that case. उनका आपका shelf life artwork का small हो जाएगा, right? So you have any thoughts ki like not like how to avoid or refrain from just this quick million likes versus putting out a work which is going to sustain some time and hopefully be insightful?
If you ask me honestly, even that should not be the drive that pushes you to create art. I think it's not the platform that should govern art. It should be the other way around. Art should be governing the platform. So that's my opinion of it. I think your inspiration, your motivation to create that particular piece, or to your belief in what you're drawing, that should be the primary motive for you to go out and create it. Not to win a race, not to win likes or shares or whatever the online medium has to offer. Of course, sustaining it monetarily, that's also a primary concern these days, because there's a global recession going on. People do not have the money for art, and we really have to struggle to make our art useful for people. So I don't judge people who are using hashtags to stay on top. But I personally don't believe that is doing justice to my art. I feel that my belief in what I want to convey, in what I want to portray, that should be the primary driving force.
So it is more of the content to drive that output rather than like
that's right.
ये whatever 4x3 के box में बिठाना है.
That's right. Yes. Absolutely.
Cool. And what would be like top 3 things that you would suggest? I know again even it's very tough to answer कि यार ये 4 चीजें बताओ, हम tip बोल के लेंगे and then improve it. But again, given the body of your work and the the widespread and the depth you have accomplished, it would be definitely helpful for few fellow designers and definitely the younger generations. क्योंकि यार वो कहीं कहीं पे भटक गए हैं, कहीं कहीं पे बहुत strong है. So just to channelize, if you have any top 2-3 things that you would suggest artists, designers, problem solvers rather, to be like you or like put out good work.
The first tip I would ever give to any artist, senior or junior, is to spend more time daydreaming and less time on social media. That's what pushes you to create better art. Frankly, you have to imagine more and you have to consume less. The second would be that
इसमें थोड़ा मैं counter करूं. Maybe you can have like sort of a even I say कि daydreaming तो मैंने word नहीं use किया था, but consume less में ना I have a slightly different opinion. मैं बोलता हूँ कि consume more but consume laterally rather than just going on
also. Yes, absolutely,
just going on dribble and observing how UI is made or going on some fancy website and just observing their patterns and some artwork से rather like poetry पढ़ो या कुछ play देखने जाओ. But वो consume पूरा like, I mean, for the lack of a better word, you shit what you eat, right? So you have to be careful of what you're eating. So what do you think of it?
Right. No, I agree with what you said. Consumption involves consuming more responsibly and consuming what really enriches you rather than junk. So I agree. Other than that, I don't really have advice to offer to artists, but I would like to use this platform to seek advice rather, because like I said, I'm from an obsolete generation of cartoonists. We don't know what to do once the print is dead, and the print is dying a slow, inevitable death. And me and people like me are struggling to find a platform online. So, and unfortunately, no matter how many number of social media followers we have, it never really translates to a monetary, gain. So I would use this platform to seek advice from youngsters who are comfortable with social media, who are doing all sorts of great work, and reaching out to people to tell me how to monetize my work on the web, and if there are any pieces of specific advice you have for me that I could follow, except becoming a social media influencer and dancing on Instagram Reels, I would be very happy to hear from you.
Maybe. And how do people reach out to you on Instagram at Green Humour?
Yes, my email address is listed on all my social media and my website pages, so you can write to me.
Yeah, and I can also vouch for it that he responds to emails despite being his busy schedule. But any other thing that you want to share? We would
no, that's all. I just hope that such conversations keep happening and that the spotlight is shed on important topics.
Cool. I think then we can conclude this. This would be a good note. I don't know how to thank you for your time. I'll just say thanks.
Thanks to you, Kedar. Thanks for considering me for this.
All right. Everybody knows the handles, but I'll just repeat it again for you to connect with Rohan on Twitter, the Toon Guy, and @green_humor on Instagram, and email ID is
rohanchakcartoonist@gmail.com. My website is greenhumor.com.
Yeah. I'll put everything in the show notes, and please again go through the brilliant articles. I know this interview is a little bit shorter and to cover what Rohan has been doing, but it's a great start.
Thank you so much, Kedar.
Thanks a lot for your time. And that's it from today's Gyan session. For show notes and more Gyan, visit audiogyan.com. And if you wish to connect with me, I am at AudioGyan Moments on Instagram. Until then, take care.
Hello! It's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On This Round is on me, Gauri is joined by Shweta Nanda. They talk about the financial independence and how it is to be a woman entrepreneur. On Anish Thing, Anish welcomes ultra-marathon runner Shivani Gharat. Shivani shares her journey of how she ran her first marathon, the mindset of a runner, and what it actually takes to run a full marathon. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Naveen, Akash and Shreyas talk about the Korean band BTS serving in the military and its repercussions. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discuss Wing Greens and their latest acquisitions and about the Indian sexual wellness market. And on Shunya One, Sheila Datya is joined by Dinika Bhatia, CEO and founder of Nuttigritties. They talk about coming from a business family and Dinika's journey in creating healthy and guilt-free snacking. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcast.com. We have some exciting new merch out there for you. Also, do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And do remember to spread the word about these shows and any other shows you might be listening to. Appreciate them, rate them, and review them wherever you are listening to them. You can also check out all our other shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week. Volvo XC40 Recharge, Bumble, Heads Up for Tails, Kotak Privy League Program, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thanks guys, without you this would not be possible.
Do you often find yourself surrounded by conversations about Web3, blockchain, NFTs, DAOs? What are these terms and how do they affect our future on the internet? So many questions, but don't worry, we've got answers to all your questions. Hi, I'm Eklavya Bhattacharya, and on our show Future Proofing, we try to decode the impact of these future technologies on various industries with experts and tech enthusiasts. Tune into new episodes coming out every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app and the website, or wherever you get your podcasts from.